Yeah. You like the title of the video? Yeah, you get it? Stussy is sus. Oh yeah, took me a whole 5 seconds to come up with that one. I feel like it would have been funnier if it was last year or the year before that. I don't know when Among Us was big. I forget because I never played Among Us. I have this thing where I never play, very rarely will I play popular video games when they like get released and everybody's playing them. Like here's an example. How was the new Final Fantasy game? I wouldn't know because I just finished Final Fantasy X, so that's the most recent one I've played, so I gotta work my way up, okay? I'm well behind on a lot of this stuff, but hey, usually whenever I'm thinking of a title or a thumbnail design for a video, it all comes back to alliteration. If I can get alliteration in the video thumbnail, I feel like I've succeeded as a YouTuber. Stussy is sus. There we go. All right, and she is, by the way. I think it's finally time we addressed her. A couple of interesting things about Stussy. Here's the one thing. Her name can be pronounced a multitude of different ways. I've heard Stussy, I've heard Stussy. Probably going to switch back and forth between this. Second interesting thing about her is she is pretty much the only member of Cypherpole 0 that was not a former member of Cypherpole 9 that we actually know stuff about, okay? So Cypherpole 0 as an organization obviously existed without, you know, like Rob Lucci and like Kaku as a part of it back when they were CP9. But the only other members of Cypherpole 0 we know about were like Guernica and Joseph and Maha, and they were the masked members, and we didn't really get a feel for most of their personalities. And then we also had, well, I guess Spondum, but he was also a member of CP9. So yeah, other than the masked members, and I guess we also saw some members back when Mother Caramel was alive and she was doing like the trafficking and all kind of stuff. There was also a version of CP0 back then, but those members are probably most likely dead at this point. I mean, that was like 60-something years ago. So aside from the masked members, we just have Stussy, and that's it, okay? And Stussy is this super secret agent that is, you know, like invading the underground, and she set herself up as the queen of the pleasure district, but she's also a member of the government in the background. But even beyond that, there's a lot of mysteries about her. For one thing, when we found out her Vivra card information, like the data book stuff on Stussy, most of the time Odo will reveal the character's age, and with Stussy, she was unique because he listed her age as secret, or like, you know, top secret classified information. So the implication is she's a lot older than she looks. She looks like she's about like in her late 20s, 30s. She could be in her 50s, if not older. I mean, look at certain characters like Shocky. Shocky is well into her 60s and, you know, still looks very youthful. The same thing like when Nami was drawn like older, like Nami at age 60 is pretty much going to look like she does now, honestly, just with like a different hairstyle, okay? So there's precedent for that. In the last chapter, in the most recent chapter, chapter 1068, we have Stussy, Kaku, Rob Lucci, Hattori, and the other government members, as well as S-Bear, the Seraphim version of Kuma, arriving at Egghead, okay? And at first I was thinking it was a little bit of just a joke or like a gag, and some of it I think was a gag. Like, for example, when they're walking around Egghead and Kaku is like, all right, well, I'm just going to Geppo up to the labosphere. You know, if Vegapunk's going to be here, he's going to be in the giant lab in the sky. So he begins to jump up in the air, and while he's like in the middle of triggering the island's security system, that's when Stussy finally speaks up and is like, oh, by the way, when you like cross one of those lines above the cloud, it'll trigger the laser defense system called Frontier Dome, and it'll just like neutralize the target, and Kaku gets like shot from lasers in like 15 different directions, gets knocked back to the surface, and he's all charred and burning, and he's like, oh, come on, Stussy, you couldn't have said that earlier. Now, I'll admit that was a joke, because earlier Kaku had a line of like, hey, I'm really cold out here, you know, around the island. And then when he got hit by the lasers, Stussy's like, oh, are you warmed up enough now? You know, so, you know, it's funny, it's comedy, it's quirky, okay. But let's back up here for a moment, all right? Because there's a few things that don't really line up here, okay? Number one, Stussy knows a lot of information about Egghead and Vegapunk, all right? Now, you would assume, because she's a member of the top secret organization Cypherpole 0 that works directly under the Tenryubito, and they have access to all this world government knowledge. I mean, they obviously don't know everything, and this was even clarified when they were heading to Egghead, when Rob Lucci was talking about, like, maybe Vegapunk needs to be assassinated because because of the Lelucia incident, and Kaku and Stussy are like, shut up, Lucci. You don't ask questions like that, So that implies they might have their suspicions over certain things, but they don't know everything, okay? And it also ties back to what Vegapunk said, or rather what Shaka said a few chapters ago about O'Hara and the Void Century, when Robin mentioned, like, hey, don't you know everything about the Void Century? You're really high up in the government. And Shaka lays it out very plainly. He says, it doesn't matter what your status is in the world government, if you have a high standing in the government or not. If you're researching the Void Century, if you're finding out about, like, the ancient history and everything like that with the kingdom and the energy source, they'll eliminate you. They don't care who you are, okay? So this is really what it comes down to, is just Eam and then the Gorosei, pretty much. That's it, really. Even if a Cypher Pool 0 member started asking too many questions, the implication is they would be eliminated as well. I wonder if they have Cypher Pool -1. Like, yeah, that actually brings up an interesting question. Like, let's say Rob Lucci were to go rogue. Like, what happens if Lucci was like, which, by the way, still might happen, because there was the events of the Cypher Pool 9 independent report, the cover story, that have still yet to be addressed, where that cover series seemed to imply that Cypher Pool 9, like, Rob Lucci, Kaku, Jabra, Khalifa, they were all going rogue. They were like, we're done with the government, we're done with working for them, we're just going to leave and do our own thing. And then 2 years later, they're not only back working for the government, but they're now in their most, like the highest status Cypher Pool of all time. So I feel like there's something that still needs to be addressed from that independent report. Like, maybe, Rob Lucci and Kaku, maybe they are just, maybe they're double-crossing the government. They're like, okay, we'll work for Cypher Pool 0, we'll agree to come back, but we have our own agenda in the background. But my point is, like, what would have happened if, like, let's say Kaku and Rob Lucci go rogue? Who's going to eliminate them? I guess another member of Cypher Pool 0, but they're kind of running out of members at this point. Guernica is dead. Maha, well, we don't know for certain. The implication is that he's dead. He was the dude with the bowler hat, Dripper Scarfino, that got destroyed by Kaido's, Kanabo, whose name I mispronounced a million times in another video. Probably still mispronouncing it, whatever. I failed the first year of Spanish I took in high school, and that was the only Spanish class I ever took, so I'm apologizing. I'm sorry. But we also have Joseph. Joseph's the only one that we know is confirmed to still be alive. He was the lanky dude, probably a member of the Long Arm tribe that escaped Onigashima. And then Maha was the one that, like, Izo defeated, and also, they both died in that fight. Okay, Izo and Maha. So there's a few other members. There's the really tall dude with, like, the pink flower headdress. Some other members are walking around, but not very many. So if enough members of Cypher Pool 0 were to defect, who exactly would they send? They would have to send, like, the admirals or somebody to really bring them in. They would have to send, like, Green Bull or Fujitora or somebody to guarantee to bring them in or something like that. Anyway, though, that's kind of going off to the side, though. But the point is that they have access to a lot of information, yet Stussy seems to have more information, because when they were approaching Egghead, Rob Lucci and Kaku didn't really know much of anything about the island. They were on that ship sailing to Egghead for a while. Stussy could have filled them in and briefed them about, like, okay, there's holograms on the island, there's this thing called the Frontier Dome, there's a defense mechanism, there's all this stuff going on here. She didn't say a word to them, which is a little strange, because this is like a government assassination plot. Like, this is something kind of high stakes. Why would she just not tell them about that? It's a little weird. It's a little like, okay, I know we're heading to this island to assassinate the world's greatest scientist, and there's some really key information that everybody should know on this team. I'm not going to tell him. Let's see what happens. Maybe Kaku will get shot with a laser. That would be pretty funny. So I don't know. I think she's playing it off as just like, oh, well, I forgot to tell you. Tee-hee, ara, whatever. And then she just walks away. But I'm like, I don't know about this. Okay. Also, the fact that she was already revealed to be a double agent in some capacity, working in the underworld in, like, the Pleasure District, when in reality she's a Cypher Pool member. Who knows? She might be triple-crossing everybody. She might be allied with a completely other organization. Stussy might be working for the revolutionaries, for all we know. She's a very mysterious character. And it's also in this chapter where I start to realize that I don't think Oda has, like, a crazy plan for Stussy. Like, she's going to be revealed to be, like, a really, really important character or anything. But I can definitely tell at this point there's a plot thread that Oda wants to explore with Stussy. Okay, there's some kind of plot thread. She does have a past with, she's mentioned that she was on Egghead before, but this was a long time ago. Also eerily similar to what Bonnie said. Like, Bonnie was like, oh yeah, I was here back when I was a little kid, like 20 years ago. Stussy kind of says something similar, like, yeah, I was on Egghead, but that was a really long time ago. Although it was probably later than when Bonnie was there, because Stussy not only has knowledge of, like, just general knowledge about Egghead, but she knows about the names of, like, specific inventions. Like, it's one thing to just say, hey, Kaku, you probably shouldn't try to just invade the upper stratosphere lab because it probably has a security system. It's one thing to just, with just like, you know, like deductive reasoning or whatever, like, okay, Vegapunk is the greatest scientist in the world. There's probably a really high-tech defense system here. You should probably be careful, right? It's not going to be that easy to get up there. And then her to actually know not just the specific trigger for how the defense system is activated, like crossing the two lines, but also the actual name of said security system. Like, that's the Frontier Dome, and she goes into a whole explanation on what it is and how it's activated and what it's called, and it's like, all right, she knows a lot about this, and she did not tell Lucci and Kaku any of it, all right? And then she also knew, like, the giant alien snake. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't been here in forever, but that's definitely 100% a hologram. How would she know it's a hologram? Unless she's seen that specific thing before, but how long ago was she on the island? 5 years ago? 10 years ago? 15 years ago? You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, if Vegapunk wanted to actually create a huge, like, alien robot snake to, like, attack intruders, he could easily do that. Now, it was just a hologram, but the fact that Stussy was, like, right away, like, nah, it's just a hologram. It's weird, right? It's weird. Oh, she also knew who Atlas was immediately. You know, Kaku was sort of going over the list of the Vegapunks, like, oh, Vegapunk has, like, the 6 different bodies, so they already knew what they were and everything like that, but the fact that, like, Atlas was approaching them, and once again, Stussy was the very first person that knew who it was. Like, that is one of Vegapunk's satellite bodies. It's number 5. It's Atlas, okay? Immediately knows who it is and what's happening here. And then Lucci attacks Atlas and uses the Rokuo gun and, like, defeats her and everything like that, okay? So, a couple of, you know, interesting thing here. I saw some theories revolving around what if Stussy actually used to work for Mads. Okay, so what if Stussy's actually way more intelligent than she initially appears? You know, she was actually like a brilliant scientist working alongside Vegapunk back in the day. Maybe not even necessarily a scientist, but was sort of maybe Vegapunk's bodyguard. Maybe before Sentomaru was the bodyguard, maybe Stussy was the bodyguard, and then she was promoted to Cypher Pole Zero because of how effective she was at infiltration and her skills. And then after she was promoted, then Sentomaru became the next bodyguard for Sentomaru, bodyguard for Vegapunk, who he is right now. Okay, so that's maybe one perspective to look at it there. Or she might have just went there before. She was maybe another member of Cypher Pole, maybe a lower echelon, like 8 or 7, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So she would travel to the island then, maybe for more routine business. Maybe she wasn't even a member of Cypher Pole. Maybe when she first joined the government, she was just a normal soldier, just a regular person wearing the suit, not a member of Cypher Pole. Because there are Cypher Pole agents that all wear the black suits, but then there's just like regular members of, there might be and there might not be. Okay, so remember back at Water 7 where we met Corgi? Corgi was the kind of shifty government employee that was dealing with Iceberg, trying to like find out what Iceberg knew about the Pluton weapon and everything like that. And then he was kind of dealing with him for a while, and then they decided to get CP9 involved, okay? So I'm not sure if it was ever stated that Corgi was a member of Cypher Pole or if he was just a regular government employee. But if he was a member of Cypher Pole, that would have been maybe like Cypher Pole 2 or Cypher Pole 3, like on the very low echelon on the Cypher Pole, hierarchy, okay? Maybe, okay? And then, of course, when we get to Ennie's Lobby, everybody in Ennie's Lobby, all the government employees are all dressed the same with the suit and the tie and everything. So maybe they were all Cypher Pole agents, just very low ranked, or maybe just you can be a member of the world government without being a member of Cypherpole, but you still got to wear the suit. You know, it's like that kind of status. Whichever, however, at some point Stussy joins up with the government, becomes a member of Cypherpole, and then is probably promoted to Cypherpole 0, and then she was given the job of like working undercover in the underworld, setting herself up as the queen of the Pleasure District, while also being a member of Cypherpole 0, you know, protecting the Tenryubito and everything like that, okay? She's certainly got a lot of mysteries going on here. Also something I wanted to bring up. So, the whole reason why Luffy received most of the credits and the huge bounty increase after Totland, you know, he went from 500 million to 1.5 billion. This is when Luffy was considered the 5th emperor, and this was because of the assassination plot against Big Mom. However, you also got to imagine, like, you know, Beiji and the Fire Tank crew and Caesar, they were all involved in trying to bring Big Mom down, but it seemed Luffy specifically was the one that actually received all of the credit and all of the infamy, I should say, and the bounty increase, okay? I actually still don't know we have, I don't think we ever got Beiji's updated bounty ever since Totland. It's definitely probably gone up as well, but not nearly as much as Luffy's was, okay? Luffy was given, like, he was the prime conspirator in all this, okay? Which isn't true. Obviously, Beiji was the one that came up with the idea. You know, Luffy was just kind of there, and he just kind of went along with it, right? Okay, well, the reason for that is 100% because of Stussy, okay? Stussy decided to talk to Morgan about it, and she arrived at the conclusion that Luffy is not really the idiot that he presents himself as. Luffy is actually this brilliant Machiavellian schemer, okay, that's way more intelligent than he initially, you know, seems. He just plays the fool just to be, you know, just to not garner as much attention and just as a front, okay? But he's actually this brilliant conspirator that came up with this assassination plot against Big Mom and everything, okay? And so Stussy told that to Morgan. I've gone back and forth with her name, I think, like 5 times in the last 2 minutes, but whatever, I'm just going to keep going. So he, you know, she talked to Morgans about it, and Morgans is like, big news, big news. Oh, Luffy is actually this genius. Oh, okay, I'll put that in the newspaper. And then that's how his bounty shot straight up, okay? Would it be interesting, because Stussy, maybe that's what she does. You know, she's all about, like, putting on a facade, wearing various masks. She has the mask of the Queen of the Pleasure District. She has another mask where she's a member of Cypherpole 0. She has another mask of maybe her true identity or whatever. You'll take all the masks off or something like that. Maybe that's how she's been living her life, her entire life. And so when she sees Luffy, this really strong up-and-coming pirate, she thinks that, like, he's the same as me. I'm somebody that is hiding behind a bunch of masks, and I'm creating all these different, like, personas to play around with. Luffy's got to be doing the same exact thing. Sort of like she's kind of projecting a little bit of herself onto Luffy because it makes the most sense to her. And so that's why she came up with that theory that she told Morgans. Now, we know that's not true. We know Luffy really is that brash. Maybe not stupid, but not the brightest bulb in the bunch, you know what I mean? Although, wouldn't it be funny if that was the twist? That was the twist at the end of One Piece. It actually turns out Luffy was this brilliant schemer the whole time. You know, like, the Straw Hats finally reach Laugh Tale. They get there, they find the treasure chamber, and all of the Straw Hats are like, Luffy, we're finally here! And then, you know, Chopper and Usopp are there like, Luffy, let's have meat and let's party! And then there's just this really, really somber, kind of serious moment where Luffy just stops. And you don't see his face. And then he just takes off his straw hat. And he just, like, crushes it. And it's like, you fools, you played into my plan perfectly, acting as my crew. I was actually evil, Luffy, the entire time. He, like, tosses down his straw hat, and he proceeds to, and, like, everyone is so stunned. Zoro's like, what? And boom! And Luffy just, like, gear 5th, just one-shots Zoro. And it's like, ha ha, I'll take it all for myself now. And it's like, what? And then Stussy shows up, and she's like, I knew who you really were the whole time, Straw Hat Luffy. Ara ara. And then Luffy looks up and is like, yeah, I knew, Stussy. You were the only one. It's time for our final battle. Yeah, that would be, yeah, so Luffy basically does the Aizen strategy. That, I mean, hey, no one would expect it coming. Well, maybe, okay, I just did, so there we go. Okay, Oda, if that's what you're planning, you gotta come up with something else now, all right? Oda's like, damn it, he's the one that figured it out. Son of a... And it's like everyone was going on and on about how Shanks was actually secretly evil. What if it was Luffy the whole time? You know? Okay. All right. Just letting you know. Okay. So, yeah, that's the thing about Stussy, though. Stussy. She's Sussy. That's the whole point of this. Yeah. So, what's up next? I don't know. Like, I feel like that whole like quirky attitude she had, like joking around with Kaku in the last chapter, that is just another mask that she's wearing, you know. And I don't know where this could go. I mean, this could literally go a direction where she double crosses Lucci and Kaku, where she like takes off her mask, and then kind of the same thing she did at the tea party. She like, you know, flying Shigons them both in the back, and then she like tries to kill them and like make off with one of Vegapunk's inventions or something. Or she reveals she was actually a member of the Revolutionary Army working alongside Vegapunk the whole time. Or she reveals, like, no, my real identity really is Queen Stussy of the Pleasure District. I really do work for the underworld. The CP0, that's the cover. You know, I'm really doing this. I'm actually part of the underworld, which means I want to eliminate the Cypher Pole. I want to eliminate the government because it'll make, you know, underworld dealings even more easy. You know, maybe it could be something like that. Like I said, I think Oda does have a plot thread with her. We're going to find out a little bit about stuff with her past and like what her relationship is with Vegapunk and why she was on the island and how she knows so much stuff and, you know, all of her different, you know, personas that she projects. That is going to be addressed probably in this arc. I don't think it's going to be anything like really major in the story, but something that's interesting enough to be like, oh, that's what her character was about the whole time. Very fascinating here, okay? I just think it's too... we don't know enough information about her yet to consider her 100% an enemy or 100% an ally, like we can with a lot of other characters. Like Green Bull showed up, we know immediately with Green Bull's personality and his perspective on the world, you know, his viewpoints, his morals, he's an enemy, okay? He's definitely an enemy, all right? Fujitora is more of an ally, okay? Smoker is more of an ally. Aokiji is more of an ally, rather than like Akainu is more of an enemy, okay? Stussy, I honestly can't pin her down. I actually have no idea, which is interesting. She actually is the One Piece character that shares the same birthday with me, April 24th. So you think I would have like I would be able to understand her a little bit, but I just don't. I don't know. But let me know what you think about Stussy down below. And yeah, that's the video. I actually don't have any octopus facts for you today. Sorry, but next time. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking signing out.